manager at Citibank, and I have led several projects by adopting emerging technologies, blockchain, helping central bank authorities, and in recent years, artificial intelligence and generative AI. And I'm amazed to share with these extraordinary talented professionals that are going to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fabiani, and I work for Visa, credit company, technology company. And I've been leading the initiatives for AI and generative AI in the consulting part of Visa. So inside Visa, we have this area of consulting that we call Visa Consulting and Analytics. And we develop projects for the Visa clients, which are mainly the banks, but can also be acquirers or the merchants. And all these projects that we're implementing for these clients in Latin America is under our area of responsibility.
Rose Sierra, I work for Miami contractors. We're a small Florida company, owned, recently hired by them in August of this year to bring AI to the construction industry to really think about how to make materials that we utilize in electrical installations more sustainable and create a greener electric experience for our clients, along with bringing AI for our training workers.
Hi, I'm Srirangapathi. I'm a principal data scientist at Deluxe Corporation. So we are a payments and a data company. We basically sell data and services to top tier banks and lenders. At the same time, we support small businesses as well, where starting from HR all the way up to like accounting and stuff like that. And on the payment side, I think we just acquired a massive payments company, and we're also payments also for federal government as well. So I'm a principal data scientist. I support both the enterprise AI initiatives for the whole of Linux in general. And at the same time, also support building machine learning pipelines for our internal revenue generating client programs, acquisitions, and stuff like that for major banks and
Hi, Jennifer Jones. I'm from Bacardi, which, if you know spirits, you should know Bacardi or Patron or Grey Goose. We've got a lot of different brands up there. I lead the global data and analytics team, as well as being responsible for technology within the North America and Latin region. And so for me, I look at everything from the data platforms, data ingestion, all the way through to data science and advanced analytics and AI, as well as sitting on a business leadership team and really thinking about what the value is that we're getting from analytics.
Well, thank you very much. Let's take a seat. Well, AI is a very evolving, rapid evolving area, especially now in generative AI. Let's start discussing about what has been happening in the last 12 months this year. I would like to know how do you see what is the current state in AI, especially in your industry, and what your industries are focusing on as a priority, and how do you see that?
So from my perspective, we've been using, we had analytics and ML and AI from a traditional perspective for some time. And what we haven't seen is user adoption. So there's a lot of people who have been hesitant to use models, who don't see the explainability and aren't really comfortable with it. ChatGPT 100% changed that completely. It was the light bulb moment where everyone was like, oh my gosh, we need AI. But from my perspective and what I'm seeing is it's really hard to figure out what the value proposition is from some of those tools.
So from my perspective, at least from the financial industry, the bulk of our revenue is coming from the financial industry. The major push from our side is the explainable AI component and the model governance in general surrounding that, because we use both regulated and non-regulated data, and at the same time we are supposed to be responsible of how we basically provide our services to our consumers and our clients. So that's one of the biggest pushes that we have been seeing in this year, and it's going to move forward. It's going to take big shape moving forward with all the models that's being at some point in time, explainable AI is going to be a big thing that's going to show up immediately. And then we're going to see a lot of businesses coming forward with solutions towards that. And the second piece of it, with respect to traditional AI as well, we have seen a lot of push towards doing auto ML. We are seeing a lot of folks trying to take in auto ML and do the same, right? And there are big companies that are trying to implement auto ML internally, but I think the major cloud companies are basically pushing their software, and we are seeing a lot of people trying to take them in. Again, as that goes through, I think explainable AI is much more easier on auto ML, so that is also been trying to come up. I think the major thing is trying to come up with all the pipelines joined together in terms of integration that's going to show up and sort of things. That's what is happening lately in this coming year and it's going to move forward.
So user adoption 100% is, we're struggling with that as well. How we plan on using generative AI is basically to create the different safety frameworks together and have workers have one central place that they can go to and ask questions. You know, what about using a ladder under this condition, under that condition, without really having to wait for somebody else's opinion. And we're starting to build our own generative model around that to be able to keep our workers safe.
From the payments industry, looking especially in my day-to-day work, I see like I would separate in two areas. One is the internal adoption that's happening in the company I work for, but I know it's happening in a lot of other companies. That's just the adopt in our day-to-day activities. And that's like the co-pilots that help us with the coding, is other co-pilots helping us with writing and like internal chatbots that also improve our productivity. So I think this is something across the industry. But when I look for specific for payments, what is amazing for me, because it's also go across all the society, is improvements we were able to make, especially in fraud detection and cybersecurity, which for us is like core of the business. You use your card to do a transaction because you trust that it's safe. And with all the evolution we have in the last few years with AI and Gen AI, even though we are using it for several years, but this evolution brought us more possibilities, and now like the level of frauds that we have, it decreased a lot, and it's good for everyone because that's the money that just goes to waste. But on the other hand, also there's AI being used to make fraud. So it is, we use it for the good and some people are using for the bad side. So I think our job as people that are working with AI and that are really new to this field is to keep up with the new technologies that are coming, and that every year we have something new released, because we need to be aware that we are using for something good, but not all the people have the same good intentions. So that's one of my points that I think in the payments industry we are always looking for, because fraud is a big concern, and AI is a huge benefit for us in preventing fraud.
Just wanted to double click on the internal adoption piece, right? I think most of the industries are trying to build up their own LLMs inside their box. I think that's clear that showing up in one of these stuff as well, shadow LLMs, so that I think now the companies are making a big push to bring it inside so that they don't lose their proprietary IP outside. So that's the internal adoption that's going to come up, and people are going to learn when they implement those, so that I think moving forward that would become a base for them to use LLMs for their customer facing things as well. And that's, we are going to see that the internal adoption is already happening. We are seeing a lot of companies taking on this co-pilot, as you just said. On top of that, I think we are going to see a big push towards most of the companies, big companies, to basically have their own LLMs on their own data show up in the next few years.
However, I do think the challenge with that, and again, it takes time, right? People are going to feel like AI is taking their job, right? And it's not that. AI is there to assist, to augment them. And so we've got to, as a society, go through that thought process and assimilate and make sure that we use AI for good, and also to enhance our knowledge and make us
according to the trends, and let's go deeper in how enterprises are using and deploying AI. Is an example of any additional use cases that is being very successful in the industry, something that people that's really adding value that you want to share?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think one of the biggest use cases that almost most of the industries are taking is, I would say, paraphrasing or summarizing. That's one of the use cases that most companies actually implement, right? And for example, most of the financial industry is already doing those at this time. Contract strategy, there is to look at your contracts to ensure, and legal team to say, can we do this, can we do that, can we basically use this data for this purposes or not. The other step towards that is, how can we basically get a better rate from the vendor, because we could also look at strategies to see how can I now, in the next renewal process, what can I do extra, so that I could increase the way in which I can use the data, number one, and number two is how can I reduce the price point so that I'm more profitable and have more profit margins. That's one of the use cases that I have seen being done across industries, specifically in the financial field, in order to get more to safeguard themselves from regulation standpoint.
How we're using it in construction is we're looking at construction inflationary data, and we're creating estimates. We're keeping in mind that time frame of when we think certain things are going to be needed, and building that, with at least some kind of, it's not a guess anymore. We have something, so it's using us to really refine our estimates and still remain profitable.
For us, I think from a marketing content perspective, we see a lot of use cases around being able to quickly adapt content dependent on the market or the consumer that you're trying to reach, as well as a lot of work when it comes to translation. So there's a lot of regulatory in different countries. You have to have different things on your bottle. It might have to be in a local language. And so rather than having people out there doing all the translation, providing them a sample translation so that they can sense check it, and then that can be what gets put on a bottle.
Yeah, I would like also to mention the opportunity that we have for what we call hyper-personalization. Because earlier this morning we had the talk from Nima Marcus explaining all the KPIs and APIs they are looking for. But you imagine that your client inside one of these versions and they are looking at the data in the version, you know when your client in there, which kind of products he bought, and how many times this client is going. And so with all this data, you are able to predict when this person is going to come back, how much they are going to spend, and which kind of product this client would buy, right? But can you imagine if besides inside your store, you could see everywhere else that this person went and which kind of merchants they are spending. The same person that went to Nemo Marcus uses the same card to buy an airline ticket and to went to their favorite restaurants. So depending, for example, in the kind of restaurants that you go, you can go back to that merchant and say, go back to Nemo Marcus and say, you have inside your clients, you have your clusters of clients, but these group of clients also buy different competitors. So you have the full picture of all your client is spending and which kind of merchants your client are going or are using through which hours. So if it's a person that goes more during the night or during the day. So it gives us the opportunity to really give offers that are more relevant and more personalized for that client. So at the same time, that for us, looking at the data is exciting from the customer perspective. It can be a little bit scary because it can be invasive, right? So that's I think something that you already mentioned also before on how we have to handle this data carefully and be responsible with the kind of information we have, the kind of tools we have, and the kind of work we are doing.
During our conversations, Pedro was talking about safety and human evaluation, human loop, and also Shan was talking about explainability. I think that they are very related. I would like to hear more from you both about that, and Jennifer and Fabian, feel free to add. Okay, and Perla, make it first.
So for us, having a human in the loop, having that human really oversee the AI is critical, especially when we're talking about safety. It's one thing to have an AI program going and have drones and circle and kind of alert us, or even analytics tell us where there might be safety concerns. But that doesn't mean that that AI is there alone. It means that human in the context of what the construction project is about, to really understand if it's truly a safety issue or not, or maybe something that we're not even being alerted from an AI perspective, but it is a safety issue. So to me, that having a human in the loop, specifically when it comes to safety, there's no question about it. There's no debate. There has to be a human in the loop. And I know that, it means that companies are going to have to ensure that they have that human in the loop, that there's a cost, but there's a greater cost that if there's not, right? Because then it's potentially somebody getting hurt or loss of life. And so we, at the end, we feel human in the loop, it has to be there, absolutely.
On top of just safety, right? Human in the loop is also needed for regulatory purposes as well, right? So you could build models, and we have seen a lot of companies with documentations to say different kinds of model documentation. You say it's a general traditional model, or is it a self-learning AI model? When a self-learning AI model comes in, it's always imperative for us to continuously monitor false alarms that could show up, because it could mean like suddenly a model could drift, and you may be basically segmenting universe that which would move to discrimination, and then suddenly that would you could be facing a lawsuit from NS50, right? So which means human in the loop is very important from financial standpoint as well for us to be there. And these humans in the loop are going to be people who know about the models. They cannot, so which means everyone needs to understand how the model works and what's the stakeholders, what's the requirement of the model from a stakeholder standpoint, and that's going to be one of the key things. And the second piece of it from a model integrity standpoint, right? Explainable AI is going to be key, again, from a new regulation and safety standards as well, right? So it depends on the kind of use case that you're going to apply, whether it could be like a localized inference way of basically doing explainability. That's what regulatory conditions do. Like, for example, you build an AI model for credit risk, and you would basically get a response back from the bank saying that why was this guy declined, and you need to be able to explain really why that person was declined in the first place. The second piece of it is that on the main pieces, as you said, we do hyper-personalization, and we put a lot of different information on the main piece. Again, that will also come back because it's an FCR. If you do an FCR campaign, that comes back, we are again at fault of putting wrong information in there, and that will end up in a lawsuit, right? So, which means both of the sides we need to have explainable AI that will basically cover our tracks and say why we decided it, it becomes more transparent for the clients as well as for the users for us to get that, right? So I think that's where from my end, from financial side, it's pretty important.
I think human in the loop is going to start to transform where people, so think of somebody new coming into a company, that they're going to start to use AI from day one. So I'm going in, I'm a junior lawyer, I'm not searching for a case. I'm using an LLM to help me find information. And what that allows people to do is that trained lawyer can now mentor that person. So their role starts to be that they can get on-the-job training in a different way. They're not searching through information. They're actually learning more about their profession. And it helps other people who maybe are more senior to them, gives them a different role in terms of development and mentorship.
Great. Well, let's talk now about 2025 and how do you see this evolving in the next 3 or 5 years? What are the main trends that we need to expect?
I mean, for me, it's ethics and governance. So I was saying before, I'm a skeptical optimist, I guess. So I really believe in the power of math and the power of numbers and, really being able to do something great for society. But I also know that we're all humans and we have biases, and we need to think about it from an ethics perspective. And we need to make sure that the data that we're using is well governed and high quality. And we were talking about this. We talked about what happens when your AI model is building and generating data that then becomes the data that it's
from where I stand, I think agentic AI is going to basically drive a lot of, I would say, revenue for clients, and once we are able to make it work, right? I think you would see Salesforce that's basically pushed up Agent Force recently, right? Because they are seeing that it could increase the efficiency of folks, and businesses can take decisions faster, and still human in the loop will be in play because we need to make sure that those decisions are still done at the right thing, it's still the right for the business, right? But I feel like the agentic AI is going to take a big leap. Like even in the financial industry, like for places where things are not regulated, they are still going to go with the agentic AI-based applications. For example, internally, if someone wants to, let's say, understand something about the data, right? They can basically ask a question and the agentic AI will basically run the query and give them the output from the data directly. That would be up from, basically it could be used from an analyst all the way to a CEO to basically go through, right? So there are various pieces around there, and the agentic AI could be like a single model to text, or it could be also multi-model as well, depending on the question that was asked. So you're going to see a mix of the agentic AI with a much more bigger agent network that will be created, like what we saw before talks as well, and that's going to transform that's going to happen in the next few years, and I feel like we'll start seeing them show up for sure in the end of this year as well. We'll see some success stories coming through. And the last thing, I'm a big proponent of explainable AI. I think that's, though it's been pretty quiet, we will start seeing a lot of academics be implemented at scale, and we're going to see a lot of companies like vendors coming up with their own solutions, and that's going to like Shadley is one of the open source, and there's going to be a lot of implementation around it that's going to make life easy for enterprises to basically lift and shift and use that in their internal processes to be safe, to be responsible in the way in which they use the models and moving forward.
So for me, definitely bigger focus on data quality and data governance is needed if we're going to be successful with AI. For construction specifically, what I'm looking towards in 2025 is really using the technology to help me select sustainable material to reduce carbon footprint in construction projects. People need to be informed, what are your choices in materials? Do we have different choices around carbon footprint, and then people make that educated guess? Something that is more carbon neutral or less carbon intensive, maybe it's even less money, but people just don't have that transparency going back to explainability because it's never been explained that way. And I think the time has come, we have the opportunity now to bring that to construction.
I think when we talk about trends, there are several ways to look at that trends in different areas. And one thing that we were mentioning a lot about the human in the loop made me connect with something I saw in another report, that they were saying that one of the trends that sometimes we are not aware of because we think Gen AI is something new and it's young people that are doing, but one of the trends that they see is what they call the golden era of the silver workers. Because when we talk of human in the loop, it's not any human. It has to be people with experience, people that know the process, people that have some empathy for others. And so it comes from people with experience. And that for me was like very interesting because it's something that I didn't think before until I saw in that presentation. And I think they named very well saying it's the golden era for the silver workers. We do need people with more experience to be in the loop and make sure that things are working the way they were supposed to work. But also what we were saying that there is a moment that we're going to exhaust all the information that we have that was human generated, and we are going to be using AI created information to train the new AI model. That's the moment when we are going to have to bring to the market and bring back to the table people that may even retired, and that the knowledge that they have was not documented before, and now we need it to document. Because in the moment that you have that knowledge and that experience documented, that's when we are going to be really able to use that information to train the future models. So it's one trend that some people are looking at, but I think few people are looking at that, and I think it's nice to mention.
To add to that, I think one thing that could potentially get us in trouble, if we have an AI model that we build for a specific purpose, and
started seeing a lot of AI strategists coming through and trying to explain how things need to be implemented, I think we'll see that the AI product managers are what is the need of the day right now, because traditional product managers do not know about AI and implications about it. And that's what this would basically address. They will basically address this problem. Hopefully, that's what they're going to see a lot going forward. I think I also wanted to bring up, I think we spoke about a lot of AI and stuff like that, but in the end, you need to basically deliver something out of the AI, because running AI is complex and it's costly as the heads, right? So which means you see a lot of, you already started seeing, but you see a lot of new emerging technologies that will come up that's going to compete with GPU-based model deployments. For example, AWS Inferentia is one example that they've started that approach to basically try to take the market share from GPUs. You'll see a lot of others coming up, so that the inference cost is going to start slowing down or going down, so that a lot of people can start using LLMs at scale for the inference speed that they're looking at. And that's a very important trend that we'll surely see as we go into the next few years.
And then another trend that I think is worth to mention, and even make a connection with what Noel was speaking this morning, is that we see that's going to be more intense in the next year or 2 years, the use of what we call social robots. And there are a lot of studies on that. I would recommend you to look for Kate Darling. She is doing a lot of research in this area of social robots. And when you look at the research, it's amazing. It's amazing how it's being used for helping kids with some special needs, or autistic kids, people with dementia. There is a very cool robot like a baby seal that's used in the hospitals for people in recovery. So you see in the research a lot of good things coming from these social robots, that they are going to be a lot more common in our daily basis in the moment that you really integrate robotics with the generative AI. So that's something that if you look at the research, it's amazing. And if you look at her research specifically, you're going to see the videos, and I was one of her presentations that she takes one of these robots, it's a dinosaur, so you know it's a device. But in the moment she holds it by the tail, that animal starts screaming and fighting for his life. And you're going to see our reaction as humans is so uncomfortable. You know it's a robot. But when you see that robot fighting for his life, it's very disturbing for us. And our brain, during our 20 million years of evolution as humans to get here, we were not prepared to live with this kind of technology that we have nowadays. So for our brain, there are like people, like animals, like things that don't move. So your phone is clearly a device. If I leave my phone here, it's a device, you know it's a device. If I look at a dog here, it's an animal. Our brain is trained to identify that. But in the moment one robot gets inside and it starts moving, our brain was not prepared for things that move and don't have life. So for us as humans, it is confused and we get attached. So we already know, based on the research, that we don't treat robots as another person, but we also don't treat them as a device. So it's more likely as we treat animals. So we get attached, we have feelings related to something that is a device. And we have to be conscious of that as humans, because it can be used for the good, that you see in the research and has results, but it also could be used to some kind of manipulation. So that's something that since I saw this kind of research, it's always amazed me, and I'm in the line to get one of those, because it's impressive how our brain reacts and how we interact with this new kind of robots that we soon are going to have in our lives. Just to have an idea, the first one that everyone had in the house was like the Roomba. Most of us give a name for Roomba. You don't give a name to your cell phone that you use way more than Roomba, but you give a name to Roomba. The difference is Roomba is moving. So for our brain, it's a different thing.
Thank you very much. Very interesting use case. Let's talk about a couple of more topics, okay? First, let's talk about the legal, okay? What about the legal development? Do we need regulation for the AI? Do we need regulation? We don't need regulation? What are your opinions?
We need regulations in the United States, absolutely. And companies
Only in
need,
the United States.
well, I think everyone needs regulations, but the United States right now is the one that's lagging behind, right? But also, it's every company, if they're gonna use the technology, they need an AI policy. That's the rules of the road, you need it. You can't really hold your workers accountable for anything if you don't have that policy, which includes training, and it includes other components, but absolutely.
I think we have a big event from the US that can help with the regulation is US elections. If we go back to 2008 with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, after the election that people start to say, oh, how much of the election was really influenced by the AI, and they're gonna see it's a lot, and that can be a good trigger for regulation in the US.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a need for regulation, and I think it's about the AI strategy. So if I'm in a corporate environment, I have my strategy, and it doesn't just say what I'm going to use AI for, but it's going to talk about the data that I'm using in my AI. And I think that comes down, we're seeing a lot around copyright infringement, and what data should somebody be using in order to train their models. So I think that absolutely we need some regulation.
Just to add there, right? So even the open source models, like when you try to take them and try to apply it, depends on which business you're trying to apply those open source models. For example, some of the financial firms already are basically, even if you use open source models, you need to provide them with data that is what that was used to build the open source model. Have to do that, right? In order to see if I can use it internally. So we're going to see a lot of those coming up, and I think at some point in time there will be regulations on the open source model itself to understand where the data is coming from and a lot of labeling around what the data was built on. We have those, but it's going to be more fine-tuned as businesses starts to look at that and the government starts to regulate that. And at the same time, even on how the AI and robots can interact with the social media, right? That's also going to start coming up like interactions, like that's one of the examples. But we already have faces, like Facebook and stuff have faces to basically control false information. But it's going to be much more harder. The only way in which those can be controlled is only by basically laws that will regulate false information or social robots, like automated agents that basically come and control false information, and that needs to be controlled at some point.
Great. Actually, you touched in your last sentence another topic that I want to explore a little bit with you is this agentics workflow, agentics system, okay, that promise to have certain complex reasoning capabilities and potentially be autonomous. I mean, how do you see that evolving?
I think it's going to, I would say how business will start looking at that is try to see the lowest hanging fruits in general, like how our companies are doing this right now. Say what would basically increase efficiency internally. So agentic AI is going to come internally first, like how we build the shadow LLMs. Agentic AI is going to start coming internally to empower our leaders to basically take decisions, right? It's going to be looked at a fine-tooth comb. So people are going, the person in the loop is going to be there until those matures. And then as we start getting things through and more guardrails are able to be set up across these agentic AI, these agentic networks, I would say. It's not, I would not say agentic AI, but I would say these agent networks, right? So once we are able to set up guardrails that are more efficient and we have people that will basically act on those with the given SLAs, right? I think it's going to take at least 2 years for it to start seeing complete, like without any problems or like bad PR coming out. It's going to be at least a year or two before everyone gets a grasp of it. I don't know how Salesforce is going to get a good PR or bad PR about it, but I feel like it's going to be, they have already seen some bad PR initially when they initially rolled it out. So hoping there will be a good PR moving forward.
And I think a little bit of it, as I think about it, where people get more comfortable working with an agent. So when I call any service, the first thing I do is let me talk to a
another question. Are we going to have works in the future? When everybody's going to I mean, the robots are going to do our job? What we are going to do in the future?
I'm sitting on the beach with a cocktail in the future. That's my I think there will be, I kind of said it before, I think we're just going to have that augmentation. So I think we'll see something like an apprenticeship come back where people who've been in jobs for quite some time mentor the younger, generation who's using AI a lot more, and it just transforms their jobs. I don't think it takes over. I think it's just a transformation in the workplace and how we interact.
But I think the biggest thing that we can do with that, we know work is going to change in the future, right? We all have either children or grandchildren. And I think what we should be doing is just helping them to understand that the technology is here no matter what, and it's an opportunity for them to be open to new opportunities and to do things differently. It very well could be that they go to a 4-year college, and by the time that they're done, whatever they learned is obsolete. I can see that. That happens today already in some of the tech space. But they have to be willing to open and say, well, I did this in college, maybe this translates into something else, or I can use AI to kind of help me with this. So we need to teach our youth to be more flexible and more welcoming and more open to new things that are going to come up. Because I do see that some of them are still constrained.
Yes. I think I could relate to that. When I was in college, C was one of the biggest languages. I know that book back of my hand. I could do whatever I want in C, but now C is no longer C, but C. Still, a lot of people still use C, right? C has still its applications, right? So I think what education is going to happen is it's going to be much more elaborate. So there are going to be a specific segment of people who are specifically focused on research, are still going to learn the basics and going to basically have that. That's going to be trained. On top of that, there's going to be still application people that's going to learn general AI. They can start using AI to do stuff, but still the mix needs to be there for us to innovate and make things. Because without foundations, you won't be able to move the needle moving forward. So I think that's going to happen. And the second piece of it is like, I think I read in a Forrester magazine where people, I think jobs are getting displaced. A lot of people are being cut off because of the deployment of AI in their industries. But what they are using is that the people who are being let go know about their business really well, and now they're struggling to basically take that and hire new people. Now the new people need to be trained and about their business, and so that's starting to see. So I think we'll start looking at a segment where even though we displace jobs, upskilling is going to start happening very soon. People are going to upskill, right? And they will start agreeing to the fact that yes, these jobs I'm not going to do anymore, but I'm going to find these extra jobs that I could innovate and basically add more revenue to the firm, and then even that will get automated, and that cycle is going to continue, right? So and the company will start to grow, and that's the mindset that the business will start moving towards in the next 2 years. It's not happening right now immediately, but they're seeing the pain already. But I think and this will get into the vision of most of the companies moving forward in the coming years, so that they are able to groom their people who are being displaced. And that's where a lot of education videos and the learning portals are basically helping a lot of people.
Very interesting. How do you see, I mean, in this whole discussion about displacement and job and relearning how to do our jobs using artificial intelligence tools, how do you see education evolving? Education, in regular education or internal training education? What companies or what companies are doing to really seize this and retrain people?
A lot of companies, or at least the bigger companies, have formal training programs, and they're using that to really bring the message home to folks that, hey, here's a catalog of things. Know that technology is changing, the world is changing. Take the opportunity to reskill. They don't call it upskill, they call it reskill. And offering them or
Great. Do we have time for questions? Okay. Just one final word describing what it's going to be or what we feel about artificial intelligence. One word.
We have a lot of work to do. That's all I would say. So I think we are in the right place. I think we have to be responsible and ethical at the same time, and innovate as well in order to move forward to what we think.
I think it all comes down to curiosity. We were talking about, and I think that's what's going to help the next generations to be flexible in their mind and just constantly be curious and be asking questions. Always go in asking questions and not taking everything at face value.
I think I'm privileged to be a part of going through this, where I have what was in the past and what is now, to be able to contrast and compare, and it's exciting. It's scary, but it's exciting at the same time.
It's amazing to be alive in this transformation time. I think I would like to invite everyone just in the end for us to think a little bit back on the chain, because we are looking forward and saying how much the AI is evolution, the AI evolution, how it is going to impact, and we are being very optimistic on that, and that's good. But if we just go back a little bit in the chain, when we talk to AI today, a lot of big companies comes in our mind. Let's say Google is developing AI, NVIDIA is in our mind. If you look at the 10 big companies by market cap today, you're going to see TSMC. TSMC is the company that's producing basically 100% of the chips that we are using for AI. TSMC is the Taiwan manufacturing company for this chip that we are using. If you go back, Taiwan is a tiny point in the map. And it's in a very unstable area of the globe, where the analysts say that maybe in the next 5 years we're going to have a war. So what's being called the single point of failure of AI, and if you look for this presentation, you're going to see all the details, is exactly this point. Everything goes back to Taiwan. If there is a war that, let's say China is saying they want to take over that area, there are a lot of theories about what can happen. One is the silicon shield that say that China will never do it, because even China depends on Taiwan to keep their economy running. But there is the other end that say they try to take it over, and in a situation like that, people from Taiwan or even from US would shut down all this production. And today is about just 2% of these chips that TSMC produces that's being is going to be producing 2 new plants in US. So I think things are being done in that sense, but we are looking forward for the evolution. We are thinking of AI, and there are other things in the world that if something happens in that area, it can really impact the speed that we have for AI nowadays.
Wow, that was great. Thank you. Well, great.